Boom! Welcome into Sports Bet Betting Insight today. Pauly and Teddy. Wednesday, July 26th. Big game breakdown. The red-hot Astros in Philly. We'll get to that game. And the Dodgers at home. New pitcher. We'll get to that. Wood was scratched. Dodgers against the Twins. Deep dive. Our final division. Where does the time go? AFC West. We start with the Denver Broncos. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. How about a bad beat? How about if he had the Angels plus the 1.5? Bottom of the 11th. Game tied at 7, bases loaded, nobody out. Encarnacion with the walk-off grand slam, Teddy. Indians hit 2 grand slams in the same game. They led 7-0 in the second inning and then didn't score to the 11th.
Sure, it's kind of like which side do you want to call the bad beat here? Because if you had the Indians and you're up 7-0, and you have Cleveland on the run line, you're feeling pretty good about that bet, aren't you? You know, they blow all of that lead, and then, of course, the grand slam, they get it back in the end. But no question. You have the Angels. You're down 7-0. You're like, all right, this one's done. And they scratch and claw their way back. And you're like, all right, we're live. All we need is just a walk-off. Anybody, just get a single. No, the granny 4-run win, that's a tough beat. It would have been a tough beat either way, whichever side you had.
Oh, man, Norris was terrible on that one, which leads us to a bad bet. What were they doing with the total here?
They were betting it to under. Under 9.5, down to 9. I mean, the bettors, I guess they're trusting 2 very mediocre starters on a very hot night. It had no chance. The game went over the total by the top of the 3rd inning.
Bad for the books. There's a lot of them. Astros-Phillies under. Look at this heavy steam. Total bet down from 10 to 8.5. Respect Charlie Morton.
Yeah, boy, I was on the wrong end of this one. I'm like, over 8.5? That's a good number. Huh? It was a good number. It was a bad result. There was some market play, George Springer being out, but certainly the betting markets have been ahead of the curve on Charlie Morton in recent weeks. 24 strikeouts versus only 12 hits allowed in 3 starts since the All-Star break. Morton threw a gem. My money, wasn't any good in this one. Astros-Phillies under 10, down to 8.5. The books took a beating, but not the only game. Not a good night for the house, Pauly.
But I'll tell you what, it was also a horrible night because a horrible night, it was hard to get a hold of some of the sportsbook directors in the morning. But it was a horrible night the previous night, Teddy, where I think you had the last 7 favorites that went off all cashed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all the parlay liability built up. And then Bellinger hit that 3-run bomb to catch the Dodgers on the run line and the over in that ball game. That was a really bad way for the books to close out on Monday night. And Tuesday, as we're talking about right here, wasn't a whole lot better.
20-cent move on the Blue Jays. They were the dog. They went off the favorite. They were back in Sonny Gray, who pitched well. Didn't get any help there. And then, certainly doesn't help because they're betting this straight in every parlays. I'm talking about the public. The Indians run line, too, with the lucky walk-off.
Yeah, I mean, the markets have been all over Sonny Gray. Gray was good again. He had 10 strikeouts, only 5 hits allowed, 2 walks, 0 earned runs. But his own error and a wild pitch opened it up for 4 runs for Toronto in the second. That was not a good result for the house.
Astros again on the road. Forget about it. 37-12 on the road. Every public play with the run line and had them in the parlay. Also where it's available. School's out on this too. Lay the 2.5 for a juicy plus return on the Astros. They're averaging 7 runs a game on the road. They get there as well, and this is good. This is the 8th time since 1903 that 2 teams have won 67 of their first 100 games in the same season. The Astros and the Dodgers. By the way, I was looking this up. The 1998 Yankees, Teddy, started 74-26.
Yeah, that was a pretty good team. They went on to win not just 1 World Series title. Would they win 4 with the basic core of that squad? But, look, you say the secret's out on the Astros. Maybe the secret's not out on the Astros. We'll talk about how they're, again, short road chalk in Philadelphia when we get the big game breakdown.
I don't get it. Also bad for the books. I'm calling it right now. The Royals are making the playoffs. They are scary. A big move on the Royals, plus 125, down to plus 108, plus 105 in some spots. Duffy pitched well. Tigers win 3-1. Or excuse me, beat the Tigers 3-1.
Well, and KC, night and day. Remember, they had that miserable stretch coming out of the All-Star break, and they blew a save opportunity. They're trailing the Tigers by 1 in the bottom of the 9th. They rally back to win that ball game. All of a sudden, new life. Now it's 7 straight wins for KC. They took a ton of money on Tuesday's action. The bullpen has been great of late, back to number 2 in MLB in wins above replacement. Their WAR is great, and ERA since the All-Star break. So KC playing with a lot of energy and getting results. Bad result for the house.
And one more. Rangers-Marlins total 9.5, bet up to 11. Hey, Gallo's hitting like a $195, but he hit 2 home runs.
Yeah, the Rangers bounced back offensively from getting shut out the previous day. Dan Straley, more home runs allowed, 3 than strikeouts, 2. I want to talk about KC for one thing because it's important. The catcher, Salvador Perez, the all-star catcher, the multi-year all-star catcher. He left with an injury. The guy's got a 284/315/525 slash line this season. If he's out long-term, that is an impact injury for Kansas City.
All right, up next, big game breakdown. We'll start with those Astros on the road in Philly, and then we'll get to the Twins and the Dodgers on SportsBit. Betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Go to SBRodds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Hey, we're back. SportsBit, betting insight today. Time for big game breakdown. As always, powered by and sponsored by BetOnline. They built their reputation by focusing on what bettors want: exceptional customer service, strong promotions, and every possible type of wager that you are looking for. Check out the bonus page at sportsbookreview.com to check out the latest and best offers and open a new account today. So here we go. We teased it earlier. Astros on the road again to take on the Phillies, where they're 37-12 on the road and averaging 7 runs per game. It's Fires against Nola, and the Astros are $1.30, 8 the total. Let's lead with this. How about Altuve, who's hitting 500 in the month of July?
Yeah, exactly. OPS of 1.31. Oh, and he's got 7 stolen bases this month as well. But look at the graphic. I mean, they don't have Carlos Correa. All right, that's a pretty big bat to lose. Doesn't look like they're going to have George Springer again. That's a pretty big bat to lose. But when you have a guy at the top of the order who's having one of the best months in MLB history, Pauly, goes a long way towards making of some of those losses of Correa and Springer matter just a little bit less.
I think the last guy to do it was Pudge in 2004, if you can believe it. 507 average. You see the on-base, the slugging, and the OPS as well. He had a run of 8 straight hits and in his first at-bat last night. 13 games with multi-hits in July. Fires are going to remember, we talked about him. He's going to be dropped from the rotation in late May. He was terrible, but then Morton got hurt. He got saved when he got hurt. McHugh got hurt as well. He was given another chance. I'll tell you, he's been pretty good. Look at this. You see the start, not so hot, but the last 10, 6-2 with a 2.36, Teddy.
Completely different pitcher. And again, one of the things that you want to do, especially post-All-Star break, is take a look at guys whose full season stats are lying about what they're doing right now. Certainly Mike Fiers is one of those guys whose full season numbers aren't giving you the full picture of where he's at here in late July.
Phillies never expect to contend, although they're a major disappointment. The books didn't know what to do with them, as they're one of the worst teams in terms of units plus-minus on the season, as they're 30 games under 500. But they have something here in Nola. He's legit. First-round pick in 2014, 7th overall.
Yeah, I mean, here's a guy playing for a last-place team, and a miserable last-place team, even though Philadelphia has hit the ball better over the course of the last 10 days, certainly since the break. They found their bats a little bit before getting shut out last night. But here's Nola, 19-17 over 282 innings with this squad. He doesn't turn 25 until next June, and he's been getting better and better. He opened 3-5 with a 4.76. Over the last 6, he's been dynamite, 4-1 with a 1.70 ERA, all the way a bet on pitcher during that span. And the market's certainly recognizing that with Houston such a cheap road favorite here. And of course, you know, Nola's got some good numbers, and he's still learning, he's still progressing, but fielding independent pitching, adjusted fielding independent pitching, he ranks among the top 21 and then 16 in baseball. That's out of 130 pitchers with at least 250 innings of work since 2015. To see Nola in that perspective, that's solid, especially for a guy, you know, first-round pick, number 7 overall. The Phillies are expecting big things from him moving forward, and even tonight.
All right, game number 2. Bet online number. No early line, because we had Wood scratch at the Twins against the Dodgers, at Santana against Brock Stewart. The Dodgers were minus 220 and 7.5 when Wood was scratched. Stewart's moved up fast. A, AA, AAA in 2016. 7 appearances with the Dodgers as well. Dodgers are, if I have this right, 59-20 since they called up Bellinger. Oh my God. And then going into Tuesday night, they had won 47 in a row when they had the lead. Unbelievable. So what do you do here? How do you handicap this? What's the difference in the line where you got a guy who was 11-1 with an ERA of 2, now he's out and it's Stewart?
That's really why we wanted to talk about this game in particular on today's Sports Bet. How much is basically the ultimate replacement starter in terms of Brock Stewart? You know, a guy who started last year in single-A ball and now is starting a game at the big league level. So, you know, talking about a guy with less than, 9 innings of work at AAA before the call-up, a guy who's been working out of the pen. And, yeah, he's been pitching long relief. All 6 of them, as you mentioned, of his outings were at least 2 innings, but hadn't thrown more than 40 pitches in a big league game yet. So how much will the markets adjust for Brock Stewart? And, of course, we're talking about the Dodgers as a team that's gone through a historic run, a team that everyone and anyone who has stepped in front of during this historic run has gotten slapped around. And yet you have to expect a pretty significant market adjustment between Wood and Stewart. Minus 220. I mean, we're not going to see LA minus anything lower than minus 160 here, even against a guy like Irvin Santana, who's been pretty, lucky and good so far this season.
It's a horror show for the books, especially out here on the West Coast. It's the get-out game. You're always going to get Dodger money, and they've been on this incredible run since April 25th when they called Bellinger up. So you've been cashing a ton of tickets. Twins had to scratch Sano after BP last night got hit on the left hand in the game. So you mentioned Santana. Okay, 11-7 with a 3.26. Last year, 7.4 strikeouts per 9. This year, 6.7. You see the walks per 9, they're up from last year, and the ground ball rate about the same. Swinging strike rate is down as well. So this is crazy. The strikeouts are down, the walks are up, the ground balls are slightly up, and the swinging strikes are down. How the hell, then, is this guy being able to put together this type of season? It's
real simple. You know, you talk about baseball luck. Well, there's one stat that fairly effectively measures baseball luck, BABIP, you know, the batting average on balls in play. And MLB average, when you hit the baseball, you're hitting about 300, you know. For Santana this season, the BABIP, they're hitting 224 when they make contact against him. That is the best in baseball. So what does that result? That results in a lot of stranded runners. Look at the strand rate, okay? MLB average, shy of 73%. Santana this season, more than 83% of his runners are getting stranded on the bases. That ranks number 6 out of 93 pitchers of 90 who've thrown 90 innings or more. So, you know, he's been pretty good. Let's not understate what he's done, winning 11 games and an ERA of 3 and change. But he's definitely been on the lucky side, and the advanced metrics say, and we've seen it already, there's been a correction for Santana from where he was when he was lights out early, but the advanced metrics say still we can expect more of a correction, 3.26 ERA compared to 4.93 FIP, 4.92 xFIP, and a Sierra of 4.89, all of which say there's more regression to come against one of the more potent lineups in baseball in the LA Dodgers.
Very good. Up next, our final division, the AFC West. We start with the Broncos. And then we get back to the Astros and Phillies for the play of the day on SportsBet. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
All right, we're wrapping it up on SportsBet. Time for the AFC West and the Broncos. Win total 8.5. Under, minus 150. Good team to talk about. I like them this year. Last year, everything went wrong. They still went 9-7 straight up. 9-7 ATS, 9-7 to the under. A 6-2 start. Then all the injuries hit, especially to the O-line. A 3-5 finish. And the mainstream stats, 22 takeaways, 25 giveaways. The offense stunk because Simeon got banged up. They couldn't run the ball. The offensive line was beat up, and they lost C.J. Anderson as well. 5.1 yards per play, not good. 3.6 yards per rush was 29th. 6.9 yards per pass attempt, slightly below average, and 40 sacks allowed. No good either, Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the 9-7 record last year, and, I mean, they only had 2 wins against teams versus winning records. They beat Houston, a team with no quarterback, and then in Week 17 they beat Oakland with Matt McGloin, and then McGloin got hurt and Connor Cook came in, and it wasn't pretty for the Raiders. once Carr got hurt. So that was their only 2 wins against teams with winning record. They beat some big names early, teams like Carolina, Cincinnati, but a lot of those squads, basically all of those squads that they beat, ended up having relatively disappointing seasons. Now, you talk about some of those mainstream stats. Look, the takeaways, they were top quartile defensively in takeaways, but below average in giveaways, and they were bottom quartile in yards per play. They were number 29 in yards per rush. They were below average in yards per pass attempt, and they were below average in sacks allowed. So certainly on the offense side of the football, going into the offseason, this is a squad that said, we have a lot of work to do. And when you're talking about a couple of quarterbacks in Simeon and Lynch, who were pressured more than 31% of the time on their dropbacks last year. That was, again, bottom quartile. And the rushing attack, number 30 in rushing DVOA. Number one thing when you have those type of issues, work on the offensive line. And they had a complete offensive line overhaul this past offseason.
All right, I think they did a good job there. We'll see if it translates on the field. Vance Joseph, the new coach. Here's Joseph on the quarterbacks. He was DC at Miami. But he said it's going to be one on the football field. It's going to be one in the games in the preseason. That's where evaluation starts, in my opinion, end quote. I'd be stunned if Simeon doesn't win the job. I'll tell you what's cause for concern, Teddy, because he's a first-round pick. When he got in there, Lynch looked completely lost.
Sure, but I mean, we've seen plenty of rookie quarterbacks look lost, especially when they're playing behind weak offensive lines. And look, Pro Football Focus had them ranked right now as a number 25 offensive line going into the season. I think that may well be a little bit low. They signed Ronald Leary, who was basically the Cowboys' 6th guard, or 6th offensive lineman, and only 5 guys can start. They signed Leary from Dallas, and it was the same story with Oakland, with Menelik Watson, a guy who's had a ton of injuries in his career, but has a lot of talent, has the potential to be an impact player. They already have a Pro Bowl center in Matt Paradas. So, the problem that they've had on the offensive line, they've been going with the likes of Donald Stevenson, who was awful last year, and Ty Sambrello, who was a high draft choice. Michael Schofield was a high draft choice. Those guys haven't really panned out. If they don't have Stevenson, Sambrello, and Schofield see the field or be anywhere near the projected starter, that's a big bonus for the offensive line. And, of course, when you look at the draft, Garrett Bowles, the tackle out of Utah, as the number 1 pick. And then a couple of weapons in Carlos Henderson, Jake Butt, guys for the young quarterbacks to find, and a couple of defenders. Certainly DeMarcus Walker, the defensive end from Florida State, is someone who has the potential to come in and give them something what they're going to be losing with the DeMarcus Ware's retirement.
Look who's back as the OC, Mike McCoy. What do you think of that move?
Yeah, well, he got fired by the Chargers. This is actually his 5th season overall as the Broncos offense coordinator. He's had 4 different starting quarterbacks during that span. But when you're talking about Vance Joseph, and it's a first-year head coach for Denver, he's only had 1 year of coordinating experience. As DC in Miami last year. Prior to that, he was a position coach. So the talk on Vance Joseph is that he relates very well to the players. When it comes to the experience running a franchise, I don't think it hurts to have a guy like Mike McCoy as the offensive coordinator, as long as the two of them get along. But it's not just an offense coordinator and a head coach change, a defense coordinator change as well.
Yes, Joe Woods is now the new DC. Last year, 4.7 yards per play allowed, number 1. 69.7 opposing QB rating, number 1. 42 sacks, 3rd. 4.3 yards per rush allowed. But I'll tell you, when you look at the DVOA and some of the other numbers, with all the talent they had, they stunk against the run.
Well, I mean, look, they led the league in DVOA by a huge margin at opposing yards per attempt, per pass attempt. So if they're mediocre against the run, so be it. They pick up a guy like Damaka Peko from Cincinnati, who's been a 10-year starter for the Bengals and an anchor potentially on the interior of that defensive line if he can stay healthy. It's certainly not a defense that say, all right, they can't stop the run, Denver's in trouble, but a defense that's been, excuse me, nothing short of extraordinary. They carried them a Super Bowl title 2 years ago. All the defense. Last year, the defense by far the best in the NFL against the pass, and incredible numbers by and large throughout the course of the campaign. You say, Can they match those numbers for a third season in a row with a new coordinator and the loss of someone like Ware? You have to expect at least some drop-off from this defense. Don't know if it's going to be a huge drop-off, but I don't know that Denver's defense is going to be quite as good as it has been. Again, they lost a number of big names in free agency.
All right, so we're just starting with this division, obviously. The Raiders are good with a lot of talent, but every close game and every break went their way last year. We'll see if that continues. Chargers already get bad news with Mike Williams, and I don't think there's going to be much of a home field advantage in LA. No one's excited that the Chargers are now in Los Angeles. I think the Chiefs, that was smoke and mirrors last year. They went 12-4 and didn't do a damn thing to improve their team. I like the Broncos. I mean, a lot of things went wrong, and they still won 9 games last year. But the schedule, I mean, how about, look at this, Teddy. They have, Sunday, October 22nd, they're in LA to take on the Chargers. Then they play at Kansas City, another road game on Monday night. Then, on a short week and an early start, they go to Philly. Then they come home on a Sunday night and they get the Patriots.
Yeah, exactly. And then after that, they still have a back-to-back road trip, at Oakland, and then a long trip east for an early start game at Miami. So it is a real tough stretch, although it's worth noting that game you're talking about on Sunday the 22nd, that's week 7 at the Chargers. That's only their second road game of the season. They have the opportunity, to get off to a pretty good start playing all these games in Denver, but not easy games. Dallas, Oakland, the Giants, all of whom are expected to be pretty good this season for the Broncos. Their schedule last year was brutal, really was brutal. This year is still tougher than average, but there is a drop-off compared to last year for where Denver was in 2016. It's an easier schedule than it was last year, but again, still tougher than average. Well, we'll get to it one day at a time, my friend, but Denver, not a team I'm likely to make a bet on their season win total. My first lean was under. The more I looked at them, the less inclined I was to betting them under. So they're probably a team I'm going to pass.
All right, money time, play of the day. Take it away, Teddy. Where are we going?
Sure, let's go to Philadelphia. Take a look at the Astros and the Phillies. Under 8. We're just talking about how good Fiers has been over the course of since getting his second opportunity in the starting rotation. We talked about how Aaron Nola is the real deal. Well, sharp money's already come in on the under in this one, and I agree with the move. Let's take the Astros and the Phillies under 8. That's game number 973, 974. That's our play of the day.
All right, very good. Back tomorrow with the Chiefs and more MLB. See if there's maybe some big trades as we get close to the trade deadline in baseball on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.